All right, I'm going to call us to order because it is 1:30, and I'm respectful of people's times. I don't like starting meetings late because you all have things to do. So let us get started with the Civic Works Standing Policy Committee for Thursday, February 3rd, 2022. All right, we begin with the call to order and the roll call. So Mr. Westerson, will you do a roll call, please?
Certainly. Councillor Middleton Hope.
Present.
Parker, pardon me. Councillor Palladino.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Crozin.
Here.
Excellent. Also here, Councillor Schmidt-Rempel, obviously in the room. Several members of administration online as well to answer any questions. Thank you.
Perfect. I will begin with the acknowledgement statement. The City of Lethbridge acknowledges that we are gathered on the lands of the Blackfoot people of the Canadian Plains and pays respect to the Blackfoot people past, present, and future, while recognizing and respecting our cultural heritage, beliefs, and relationship to the land. Lethbridge is also home to the Métis Nation of Alberta, Region 3. So our first motion is about the agenda. Now we have one proposed change to the agenda. I've been informed of that item 4, the outdoor sports court location, while it will still be on the agenda, is moving from a presentation to a submission. So we will be moving that into just down on the agenda. It will still be going first, but for those of you who are hoping that Mr. Richter would read the presentation to you, hopefully you've read the submission instead. So we will begin with that if we get an adoption of the agenda. So I have a motion that I need someone to make that the agenda of the regular meeting of Civic Works Standing Policy Committee of February 3rd, 2022 be adopted as amended. Can I get someone to move that, please? Councillor Palladino, all in favor? Perfect. All right, next on our agenda is the consent agenda. The consent agenda has 2 items under it. We have the minutes from our past meeting of January 6th, and we have the status of initiatives that have been brought forward. So I have a motion related to the consent agenda. Be resolved that the minutes of Civic Works Standing Policy Committee held on Thursday, January 6, 2022 be approved, and the Chair and City Clerk Designate be authorized to sign the same. And further be resolved that the status of initiatives February 3rd, 2022 be received as information. Unless there's any questions, can I get someone to move that resolution? Councillor Middleton Hope, all in favor? Excellent. So that jumps us then to what is now our new 5.1, outdoor sports court location. The information was provided. I'll just sort of sum this up since we're not having a presentation. At the last CIP, we gave money to the sports court. In that discussion, there was a proposed location. What this now is showing us where the new proposed the new location for this is, which is at the Dave Elton Ballpark beside St. Patrick's Cemetery. So that's sort of the background. Are there any questions from members of the committee regarding this? Councillor Middleton Hope.
I'm sorry, Madam Chair, could you just repeat the last piece in terms of where this is going to be located? You said something about St. Patrick's Cemetery and I didn't hear it.
You know where Dave Elton Ballpark is?
Yeah.
And then between the ballpark and the cemetery, there's an open green space there, and they're proposing that area for the courts. But Mr. Richter can answer any more in-depth questions.
And what are the proposed sports courts? Are we talking?
Richter, if you want to say.
Well, there we go.
This came from the community groups at the CIP, and there's an assortment of outdoor games they want to play on. If you just want a little detail.
Actually, I'm going to defer to Chris Witkowski, the Parks Planning Manager, as he's been involved with this project since inception.
Chris is online.
Yes, I'm here. So I do apologize that there's no video on my screen, so I'm just going off audio. So I'm not sure if or what you're looking at in chambers right now. But the Sports Courts project, just a real quick summary, was it initiated from a discussion with Roller Hockey Lethbridge, Lethbridge Lacrosse, and Roller Derby Lethbridge. And this was just in identifying a need for these groups to have outdoor spaces to play. They have limited space right now. They play indoors on ice rinks when there's no ice present, but that only lasts a few months of the year. So this project came to CIP. So it's designed to be an outdoor rink without the ice. It'll have either a concrete surface or a specialized sport court flooring. It'll have traditional hockey boards, and then instead of plexiglass, we'll have a wire mesh or a chain link glass. And then, like Councilor Crozin said, initially this was planned for 28th Street North. We had originally proposed one. There was amendment in the CIP to build 2 of them, which I know the sport groups are really happy about. So thank you very much to those councilors who voted on it and those who continue to support it. But when we went to 2, we didn't quite have enough space in 28th Street North, so we had to find a new location, and that's where we ended up with the Dave Elton Sports Park.
Any further questions, Councillor Middleton Hope? Okay, any other questions from SBC? The resolution, if we do pass it, is accepting this as information. This is an operational decision, but since the discussion at CIP was about 28th Street, with full transparency, administration wants to make sure the public understands where these are going to be constructed. All right. I don't see anybody else in the queue with further questions. So thank you, Mr. Richter. Thank you, Mr. Witkowski, for the information on this. We will move then to the resolution that is before us. Be it resolved that the Civic Work Standing Policy Committee recommend that Council receive the attached report and location map as information. Is there any debate or discussion around the resolution? Does that work for everybody, what we have? And if so, I need someone to move it. Okay, Councillor Middleton Hope. All in favor? All right, that passes unanimously. So now we get to 5.2, which is why I think I have a lot of people in the audience. You guys weren't here for the sports court, I'm assuming? All right, we move then to 5.2, CityLink Network redesign. This too is on our agenda as a submission. Council received the information about the redesign. We also had a presentation on this at the January 6th meeting. We have information from Mr. Sanderson, and we have correspondence from members of the community as well. So what I'm going to do, just to kind of have a system for going through, I'm going to start with Mr. Fox and Mr. Sanderson. If there's anything new since you presented last month that you think the SPC needs to know, and then I'm going to move to members of the public who wish to speak. I might be putting you on the spot, but I just want you to, if there's anything that in the last month has changed since our last report, this is your opportunity to let us know, and then we'll invite members of the public up to speak.
Thank you for the opportunity, Councillor. As far as new developments in CityLink, we do have a few. One is we continue to work on the on-time performance, and I'm pleased to report at this time that our on-time performance for January was at 89%. Again, that's thanks to our transit operators who are taking steps to ensure that they're not leaving time points early. That is making we see a substantial change in the satisfaction of our customers as a result of that. The other thing is, again, working on future enhancements for the transit system based upon the feedback, also based upon the feedback that we received as part of this packet as well. The majority of the comments that were received are people that we have spoken to, but getting them in writing, again, allows us to understand them a little better and things for us to work towards going forward. One of the things that we are going to be focused on would be, again, with the continuation of CityLink, would be the creation or the alteration of the blue and gold routes in order to improve connectivity at the university for those on the purple rounds. If you take a look through the comments, there was a number of comments that rose that as an issue. That's another thing that we've been working strongly on and hope to introduce sometime around May in order to get there. Other than that, what we can possibly report is that it's been very quiet. As far as the comments go, we're down to general levels that we're receiving, and we're pretty much most of the comments that we are receiving through our normal structures are related to general operational issues more so than CityLink. So we feel that again, from a numbers perspective, when we first introduced CityLink, we were at 438 comments that we received. The vast majority of those were negative. In this last push, we see that we're down to 40 comments Of those 40 comments, a handful of them are actually positive, which is something that we're starting to see now, which is very enthusiastic. And then a large number of them also were from employees. And that's something that we continue to work with our employees and getting them to feel comfortable with the new system as well. So, because it's been a big change for them too. So thank you for the opportunity.
Councillor Parker.
Thank you very much. And I can only speak on behalf of myself, but this is still the #1 comment I get from citizens and users, and they may not be going through the traditional venues which we've offered. And I want to thank our administration and our communication staff because they've done a lot over the last 30 days to get the message out through the website, Local Herald, and actually one of the recommendations I said is putting some signage on the buses, which is greatly appreciated. We do get lots of email, and you put weight into each letter you get. But I did get an email, and I think my colleagues got an email.
You want to wait till after we get the public to
Oh,
speak?
sure. Is that what you want to do? Okay, well, we do that first. Okay.
We'll do it more like a
Yeah,
public
sounds
hearing.
good. Thank you very much. My apologies for that
It may
process.
change our question, sorry.
No problem. I apologize.
I have a few people who are on the list, and if others do wish to speak, they'll be given an opportunity. I'll open the floor. You'll have the ground rules, 5 minutes to speak. You don't have to use it all. Please introduce yourself so that all members of the SPC know who you are. And please make sure that at the end, if Mr. Westerson needs your name, he'll get it. And just be aware also, SPC members may ask questions after all speakers are done. A little bit more like a hearing. And first on my list, we have from the school district, Chair Allison Purcell and Vice Chair Christine Light. So if you would like to come up, the floor is yours for the next 5 minutes.
Well, good afternoon. Thank you for having us today. My name is Christine Light. I am Vice Chair of Lethbridge School Division Board of Trustees, and with me is our Board Chair, Allison Purcell. So we're thankful for the opportunity to come and just share some of the challenges that families and youth have brought to the attention of school administrators regarding public transit. Our desire is for students and their families to be able to participate in, benefit from, and contribute to our community in meaningful ways. Many of the challenges expressed by youth and parents fall under the umbrella of accessibility. So we're not talking about transportation for the purpose of getting to and from school, but transportation getting to and from out-of-school activities. So we do want to say thank you to City Transit staff for working with school administrators and providing students with an in-service on how to access services. And though capacity has grown through this service, significant challenges remain. The heart of our advocacy lies with the reality that lack of accessibility to public transportation is having a negative impact on the ability of students, children, and families to engage in our community. Barriers to accessing public transportation impact our children and youth in ways that impede their access to services. For example, work before school, work experiences during the school day, accessing food and appointments. It also diminishes their growth and healthy development due to limited access to recreation and leisure centers in the city. Marginalized individuals become increasingly disadvantaged because they are challenged with accessing the transportation service they need. So some generalized issues that we have been told of are the assumption of Wi-Fi, the assumption that all will have technology, the complexity of the system as it is, distance from stops to home, young mothers with small children at Victoria Park being challenged to navigate a bus within a reasonable walking distance with small children to access food, childcare, and household items, and as well as parents of young children who can't afford a family pass to go with the child to take them to appointments, recreation activities, and community events. So we ask that you move forward with an inclusive mindset. And we know how difficult it can be to secure feedback. And from the general population, as well as the vulnerable population. And Lethbridge School Division would be pleased to collaborate with the City of Lethbridge to distribute and gather feedback through a survey to our students and families to find these vulnerable people and have their feedback. And together we can frame the type of feedback that would be valuable for both the service provider and user. I'll hand this over to Allison now.
Thanks, Christine. As a school division, we do want to be able to truly help the city to be able to make transit accessible to as many riders as possible. A couple of examples I have are of two families, both with high school students that have disabilities. They have accessed the tools the city provides, including travel training. One family actually used travel training years prior to CityLink and on demand so that their son was able to ride city transit independently to and from school. Travel training has been a fabulous resource to the disability community for years. Both of the students had previously been riding the Lethbridge Transit independently to be able to get to and from school, as well as to go to their work experience places. Since the new system has been in place and after accessing the tools, they are no longer able to be inclusive members in our community, accessing local transit, even after using the tools that transit has offered. There are safety concerns in regards to the number of crossings they need to make to get to the new stops, and are having difficulty with the complexity of navigating the apps and being different for each leg of their trip in the day, going to school, from school to work experience, and then work experience to home. Both of the students would qualify to ride Access-a-Ride, but when we work so hard towards inclusion for our students, we certainly don't want to see them taking steps backwards just because a new transit system came into play that doesn't recognize the needs of all the citizens. The feeling is that should CityLink and on-demand remain the way it is, we are truly cutting out a portion of our community that could otherwise use the transit service independently. And we would ask that the city look to explore other ways to expand CityLink so these members of our school and general community could continue to use city transit rather than them needing to go through Access-a-Ride or find other transportation when they were independently able to use transit. As Christine identified, the school division would be willing and able to work together to help identify these students and families and their continued challenges through a survey that could be done rather quickly. We also want to be a part of the solution where we are able to have our students ride on transit in an inclusive way, regardless of their barriers, whether that be financial or due to disability. We thank you for taking the time to hear from citizens, and we can appreciate the challenges that lay ahead for City Council. Thank you.
Very much. Even though there are two of you, you still got in basically in the 5 minutes, so you've set the standard for everybody else. All right, next person I have on the list is Avery Rain. Is Avery Rain available? All right, John Gonzalez then. Okay, Deirdre McKenna. Welcome.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm back to present again. I have read all of the comments, and I think it's important for the committee to remember how this all came about. There was a report presented to you in January to assess the success of the new CityLink system. Management purported to have reviewed the community's opinion about the success of the system and also presented data and came to the conclusion that they felt that CityLink was a success and wants this committee to encourage council to approve its continuation. This committee delayed making that decision while further feedback from the community was sought. I would consider this feedback to be significant, and I have some concerns about the comments that management have made about their assessment of it. You have 37 separate submissions here. 2 of these submissions are representative of a larger group. One, the College Students Union provided a submission that relayed the complaints of 12 students and 3 staff. And you also had the Transit Union providing a submission that not only was expressing concerns of their membership, but also of what they say are many undocumented and informal complaints that they have heard. I would suggest that this feedback should be telling you that it would be a bad decision for this committee to be supporting management's recommendation as it goes forward to council. I suppose I characterize some of the submissions here rather differently. I found there was one overall positive view about this, and that the themes in a lot of these submissions were longer travel times, many requests to return to the old system because it provided better coverage, and numerous requests to restore funding. There were also several challenges, including the union's response, challenging the accuracy of the data that was presented in the original report that purports to represent that since CityLink has been put into place, that ridership has increased and that there is more on-time performance. I think that there needs to be concern. You need to be concerned when there are questions being raised about the accuracy of the data. One of the other things that concern me is just with respect to some of Mr. Sanderson's conclusions about some of the complaints. One of the comments about saying, well, it's a good thing that complaints have reduced. We had about 200 complaints and now we only have 40. That's a good thing. That's based on a flawed assumption. It assumes that if people do not complain over and over again about the same thing, it means they're no longer concerned. What's actually more likely, which I think was commented in the union submission, is that if people complain and they feel like they're not being heard, eventually they just give up complaining. So I don't think that it's appropriate to conclude that because now today you have 37 fairly thoughtful written submissions, that means people are less concerned than they were about the system. I don't think that's the conclusion that you can arrive at. I don't think that it's also appropriate to suggest that the majority of these submissions are city employees. Obviously, I don't know whether or not that's correct or not, but I'm not sure that that comment was warranted. One of the other things that concerns me, even just sort of as a taxpayer, is I think it's important for you to remember that from my understanding, one of the next steps that is or will be occurring is there's going to be $2 million worth of infrastructure put into place to support CityLink. I was quite concerned to read through these comments that as a result of CityLink, 2 costly infrastructure projects have been negatively impacted, that this north facility has basically been abandoned. And there were numerous complaints about how useless the city downtown hub is because of the frequency with which buses are going through, that it's basically a useless place for people to be able to wait because otherwise they're going to miss their bus. Recall that this all started because the city asked, our city council asked for there to be a $350,000 reduction in the budget. So there's been this massive disruption in service for the price tag of $350,000. You're now using 2 pieces of costly infrastructure less usefully than you did before, and you're now being asked, or you're planning on spending $2 million in infrastructure to support this CityLink that you still have serious complaints about the utility of. That concerns me greatly. I understand that there may be questions about whether or not this $2 million is something that can only be used on infrastructure, but I would just say, looking at it from a slightly less informed perspective, which I think I would be categorized as, why on earth would you be, when you have so many complaints about the quality of the service and the fact that people want more service, why are you even contemplating spending this $2 million on building more buildings that historically now stand either abandoned or underutilized? You've been here before, and those errors have been made before. Of all of the recommendations that I've seen or the complaints in this package that's been put together with you, it seems to me the most sensible approach has been proposed by the union, which is at page 23 of 67 of the package that you were given, where they provide a recommendation to council about what should occur, which is to restore the previous system and abandon CityLink, restore the previous transit budget, and implement a series of adjustments to improve the original system. Thank you.
Is there anyone else in the audience who wishes to speak? All right. Come forward. Please state your name so we can have you on record.
Good afternoon, members of council, Deputy Mayor Crozin. My name is Travis Oberg. I am the president of the Amalgamated Transit Union Local 987 here in Lethbridge, Alberta. I proudly represent 130 plus transit workers in our community on a day-to-day basis. You all see, and I think you, the speaker before me, referencing our report. Sorry, I get a little nervous when I talk in front of council, but I've spent the last 3 weeks thinking about what I wanted to say to council on behalf of the riders in our community. Riders that aren't being heard, riders that aren't having their value taken, and a slight minority who actually have the time to put in their complaints to members of management. And I'm passionate about this because each and every day as an operator, I see the disruption that it's caused in our community. Members in our community that no longer have equal access to community buses, equal access to transit, and a consistent service that provides daily reliability for all to get to their destinations. In 2017, I was asked to come before City Council to talk about the Lethbridge Transit Master Plan. And in that master plan, I strictly, and as I recall, I informed Council not to go to a direct ridership system because coverage and people would be impacted when the system was taken out of their communities. We've had a fixed route coverage system in our communities for so long that people have built their livelihoods around it. It's consistent, it's reliable, and it's effective. Fast forward to 2019, I was asked to speak to the consultants with the KPMG report. And I was astonished because I attended one meeting. In that meeting, I was informed that they would be recommending on-demand service regardless of what the feedback of the community was. And in that feedback, 90% of the public was satisfied with the current system that we operated prior to CityLink. 90%. That's a big, huge number of riders who didn't want change. Yes, there needed to be slight adjustments to some of the fixed route service that was provided then. But it's not to the tune of what's happened with CityLink that's abandoned many riders. Riders who have lost their jobs, who have had to move to get closer to transit lines for the simple cost of $350,000. I could have saved you $350,000 by reducing service on the old system from half-hour service to 1 hour service, starting at 10 o'clock p.m. rather than it running half-hour service that much longer. It's a minute amount of money. Previously, you heard a comment back on January 6th that travel time from the university to Southgate Station has gotten faster. It's only partially correct. Route 2 is a 30-minute timed route from the university station to Southgate. Its on-time performance is a 0 to 5 minutes late. That route runs closer to 5 minutes late all the time. That's 35 minutes to get from the university to Southgate. If you would have taken Route 12 on the old service, did one transfer downtown to Route 23, and got to Southgate, it would have took you 35 minutes. 0 change, only 1 transfer. And we did this for 1 less transfer. It didn't make any sense. You also heard that by adding the mini hub over at Bowley's, travel time from there was 6 minutes to downtown, which is incorrect. It takes 15 minutes scheduled by bus. Route 4 comes through there at Bowley's at 20 after the hour. It's not scheduled downtown till 35 minutes past the hour. And when you take the time it takes to get your on-demand bus, which is 0 to 20 minutes, just to get the bus to your door, 0 to 10 minutes to get over to that location, and if you get there in time before the bus goes through, it's another 15 minutes to get downtown. That Lakeview community had 15-minute service, at tops 20-minute service to get downtown. Now it's upwards of 45 minutes. And from there to the college was 5 to 7 minutes. It now takes you 30-some minutes to get to the college just from Lakeview. That is a reality. It is not a matrix, it's a reality. This is what's happened with CityLink. And to make adjustments to on-time performance, the numbers are skewed. I'll be the first to say that. As operators, when we're out on certain buses, an operator, when we're relieved, would come out with a van. I'd go back in that van. Well, now when we're driving these buses, we start falling behind. Our operators come out with another bus. They get to that start location with that bus, and they start that route on. Well, when that late bus is coming in, what's happening to those passengers? As an operator, we're asking them to disboard the bus, asking them to wait for the next bus, because this bus is now continuing on out of service, leaving passengers stranded. That helps correct the on-time performance. And I apologize for running late, and I'm going to wrap up. Thought it through my head many times, but I'm going to stand by our letter. Restore the previous service, restore the budget. If you want one less transfer to go to the Southgate station, interline routes 12 and 32 on the old system resolves those issues. And I also propose to City Council is it's time in this city that we provide a council-based transit board advisory that has quarterly meetings and has oversight over transit more periodically. Because there's lots of things happening in transit that are misrepresented. And the reality today is you'll hear from management about what their perception is, and you'll hear from us operators who are on the front lines, and it's completely opposite. With that, I rest my time, and thank you for your time.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the community who wishes to speak? Yep, come forward. Again, please state your name so we have it on the record.
Hi, I'm Mike Miller. I'm a transit operator. I didn't come here planning to speak, so I'm ill-prepared, but I do just want to give a minute to let you know what I see in the driver's seat every day. The new system, we are told all the time that we're not a transportation company, we're a customer service company. Our customer service is not there anymore. December, we all know how cold it was. We used to, all the buses would come in together and we'd hub up. Passengers could get out of one warm bus, transfer to another warm bus, continue where they were going. I now drop customers off where I know they're going to wait for 8 to 12 minutes at 30 below at a glass shelter with 3 sides for their next bus. It's not customer service. My arrival and departure times are quite often the exact same time on my run. I don't have time to help a lady carry bags, don't have time to tell them what the next bus is. I close the doors and try to maintain schedule. If we are about customer service, CityLink does not provide it. That's it. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay.
Good afternoon. My name is Caroline Freeman. I am one of your transit operators, and I've been a faithful operator here for going on 12 years. This system, on a daily basis, as an operator, I open my door and I get barked at by an unsatisfied customer. My route takes me through the downtown terminal 18 times in a shift. My arrival time is 5 after, my departure time is 5 after. If nobody is waiting, I'm not obliged to stop. I have to keep the wheels rolling. I no longer can use the downtown terminal as it was designed to be able to heat my food if necessary, perhaps make a cup of coffee. I now use my defrost on the bus as the way in which I can heat up my supper. That is a recipe for food poisoning eventually, because I am not able to use the private and safe washroom in the downtown terminal because I just don't have time. I am obliged to use public washrooms. And I had an incident a week ago whereby I came to work at 3 o'clock. I was not able to use a washroom until about 4:45. And it was the co-op. And of course, I have a very restricted time constraint. So I was in a little bit of a hurry. I walked in. I did not know that they had washed the floor in the bathroom. There was no caution sign. I strode in. I wiped out. I hit my head on the wall. I damaged my knee, and I had to go home and provide medical attention to this injury so that I could return to work the next day. I also heard an account from one of my colleagues yesterday, and this, quite frankly, is disgraceful. This gentleman, and I will not mention his name, told me directly that on one of the occasions when he had to use a porta potty in sub-zero temperatures, because again, of the time constraints, we don't have enough time to adequately use facilities. Because it was so cold, he could not actually get the lock open before he urinated in his trousers. How is that humane? And I hear things like this. You don't, because we live in a workplace where we are fearful, we're looking over our shoulders, and quite frankly, those GPS units have been programmed to be punitive towards your operators. Good afternoon. Thank you for your attention.
I hope also if you do have a complaint, you will follow up either with the whistleblower or with someone in your union. Because if those are your complaints, I hope you're going to follow up on those. Is there anyone else who has anything they wish to speak on? Okay, we then open it up then to questions. And Councillor Parker, you were already first in the queue.
Actually, all my questions were answered already.
Oh, okay. Anyone else on the SPC? Well, I will begin. Mr. Fox, Mr. Sanderson, you have heard some concerns. Do you have any address to some of these, both from people who work for this and from consumers who use it? Do you have any responses for us?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Crozin. I've got a few lists. Again, there was a lot of comments there, so I'll try to keep it relatively high level, but go in order. To the comments for the school board, I would fully support the comments made by the school board on the importance of public transit and availability for public transit for our students. I know that we've been working very closely with them in the past. We'll continue to work very closely with them in the future, regardless of what decision comes from this. One of the issues that we have talked about is the potential of the school board assisting to alleviate fares for children under 18, just in order to remove some of those barriers that children have in order to do it. That being said, we both have different mandates. The school board is mandated to provide transportation to their students for school. That is their purview. And we look forward at opportunities to partner on how to help them with their mandate of getting their children to school at those places, and we will continue to do so in the future. The Lethbridge Community College, this comment was brought up, and I'm sure for those of you that recall, prior to from the old council when these decisions were being made, this was noted as a potential pain area. Under the old system, the majority of routes on the west side and definitely on the south side terminated at the college. This wasn't indicative of the ridership that came from there, which was approximately 110 to 140 people a day. To have that many buses providing that level of service, and also in the long-range plan and a number of other comments, it was seen as a large inconvenience for the majority of our riders that don't go to the college. So we did expect that there was going to be some resistance to some of the changes for the students. Again, we do understand that. We've worked with the college. Part of the challenge is that they lack an accessible route onto their property, but I know that they are aware of that, and my hope is that they're working on it, and we are partnering with them for shelter locations and that in the future. There were a number of comments on data, and we can disagree about many things about perspective and even what the data necessarily means, but the data is the data. We are very diligent and we're very transparent in what that data looks like. Most notably, approximately 3 weeks ago, we made all of that data available on our website, live updated. So if anybody wants to go in and take a look at the data and do their own analysis of it, they have the ability to do that on our website in order to do that. We strive to be transparent, and we provide a professional analysis of it. The analysis, I would say again, and I know that I sound a bit like a broken record on this, is that at the end of the day, yes, there have been, as was stated when this project was started, yes, there have been some people who are disenfranchised from the service. Yes, there are some people that this service doesn't work as well. What City Council directed us to do was to take the entire transit system for the city of Lethbridge and completely restructure it for the thousands, and this isn't just a handful of people that use this service. Thousands of people use this service every day. And we restructured it and changed it for everybody. The vast majority of those, the system either works better, works the same, or doesn't work enough in order to give a comment to us. We did receive comments from a number. We received comments from 438 people as a result of that and worked with each and every one of them. That number has been reduced substantially going forward. Again, our recommendation at the end of the day, but we are also not only transit experts, we're also advocates for those that use transit in the community. I'm also a transit user and use the transit system every day and see this and associate with those that do as well. At the end of the day, our ridership is up substantially as a result of CityLink and as a result of the service. And what I would like to caution council on is to make another disruptive decision. The first decision to go to CityLink, as was indicated by us, by staff, was going to be disruptive. Quite frankly, we expected it to be considerably more disruptive than it actually was, right? A lot of that is due to the hard work from our bus operators on the street in helping their customers with it. A lot of that is with staff and their hard work in making sure that we had a good design and listening to our customers. So we're very cautious to recommend going back to the old system, because what we've seen is we've seen an uptick in ridership, and we're very concerned for the thousands of people that use the transit system to go back to a system which may not work as well for them again. Going on to comments from ATU and from the rest of the union, I would first like to say that I don't think it's any surprise that Travis Oberg and I look at everything from a bit of a different perspective. My perspective and our mandate is to provide an efficient and effective transit system for the city of Lethbridge. That's what I was hired to do, and that's what I was tasked to do. One of the biggest challenges we had, and again, this is something we've been completely upfront with the union, was the amount of dwell time that our bus operators would encourage throughout their day, which is taking service directly away from our customers. Okay? What the example that I could give is that, and it is an example, it's truly reality, that almost every bus in the system would sit and wait for 10 minutes out of every 30 minutes. So out of every hour, that bus was actually rolling for approximately 40 minutes. Okay? Did that allow operators the opportunity to have lunch and read books and use the washroom and all those sorts of things? Absolutely. In CityLink, okay, we followed transit best practice, which is to reduce that layover time to 10%, right? And that's the minimum that we're at, which is 6 minutes every hour. All of our bus operators have access to washroom facilities. All of our bus operators have access to heated and cooled washroom facilities. We've added porta potties at key locations for those times that it is an emergency. I don't want to get too far into the weeds as far as some of these things go, but our operators also bid their work in order of seniority. So again, some of our shifts are straight through, where a person's working 8 hours or plus on the bus. Those runs are chosen in order of seniority, and they're always taken by senior operators that choose to do it. Okay? We do offer many shifts that are broken up with an hour, 2 hours, sometimes 3 hours off in between. Those ones always end up at the end of the road. So again, we have a number of different issues. We have a labor management committee. We have a sign-up committee that discusses the work. We have a route evaluation committee. We have a safety committee. We have all these committees that we run all these issues through, and we continue to. We are going into contract negotiations at the end of this year, and some of these issues, I think, are probably well set for the bargaining table at that time. I would also like to say that the operators, again, talking about the lack of time that they have on the route, not one operator has ever been disciplined for failing to follow their schedule. Okay? That hasn't happened as long as I've been here. Do we coach them? Yes. Do we advise them as to what their on-time performance is? Absolutely. That is our obligation in order to do that. And the reason we do that isn't just because. The reason we do that is an operator staying on time is the single greatest thing for customer service for our customers. That's the thing that's going to allow them to make their connections, and is going to allow for the shortest time on their trip. So the only other thing I'd like to add, sorry, I'm out of water here, is, again, correcting, there was a number of facts and figures that were thrown on, and I could dispute all of them, and I'm not necessarily going to do that. Again, the facts and figures that we have in our report are accurate, and the data is available on our website. The one thing that isn't is frequent comment as to the amount of time that using the demand response service uses. We've taken a look at the numbers on that. Our service standard, what our promise to our customers is once a person requests a trip, that we will have a vehicle at their front door within 20 minutes. That's a pretty good service standard. When you take a look at what our average delivery is, that vehicle is there within 6 minutes. So a person decides that they want to take the bus, on average, they call, that bus is there within 6 minutes on their door. At that point in time, they've got another, on average, 7 minutes to get to the terminal. So in those on-demand areas of Lethbridge today, on average, now again, sometimes it's earlier, sometimes it's later, right? But on average, what your expectation should be would be from the time that you make the call that you want the bus, it's going to take you 17 minutes to get to the CityLink hub. And that's reality. That's data. Our decisions, our recommendations are based upon data, and they're based upon the goals and the desires that council directed to us. So, thank you.
I'm going to shut my mic off. I have a procedure question for Mr. Westerson. I'll be right back with you. Sorry, I'm actually going to make a motion that we go into closed session because I think there are a couple things that might make, that we cannot ask openly that some people have questions on. So I'm making that motion. Do I have?
Who is going to be participating in the in-camera?
In-camera? It would be administration and staff and the SBC. That's the motion I am making, that we move into a closed session.
We ask some questions first before we go in camera, just for other respect to the people that may be in the audience, because the in camera may go a certain length of time or something like that. And so,
go ahead.
Are you fine with that? Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much, and I appreciate that, and I will be supporting that when we do go into camera, just so you know. So I'm hearing different stories, and I'm speaking on behalf of myself, but I may be speaking on behalf of some of my colleagues. The staff do a good job in that their job is to be progressive thinking and to deliver on the request of council, not this current council, but past council. So I think that's important to be stated because there's 3 new members of council here, so they're very much carrying the decision of the past council. So I'm hearing the consequences of a decision that was made by a council of the past, and I heard it loud and clear prior to the election, but also during the election, and I think I can speak on behalf of a few around the table here when we visited numerous senior organizations, Norbridge, the Green Acres. Common theme was that they really liked the way the transit used to be, and they really miss it. And they asked the question, why did you do this? And the answer I said to it was, council gave a directive through a KPMG report, which love or hate it, sometimes you don't like these reports, but we cut $350,000, I do believe, or $300,000. And there was an opportunity to maybe find some streamlining and maybe offering service at a better level. And there was a consequence to that, and sometimes it's okay to admit that it didn't work out. This is from a council perspective. I'm not speaking on behalf of...
Is this a question now?
Yeah, I'm going to ask the question. Thank you very much. So I want to make sure I had context to it. Mr. Sanderson, in hindsight, if you could go back in time here, would it have been best to maybe strike up a committee of the users? Because obviously the issue is always coming from the users. I'm thinking of a committee of like some users, some drivers, some members of administration to maybe make some changes and then have a cause and effect. How is this going? Maybe this isn't good, versus just doing it and then trying it out for 6 months. In hindsight, would you have done anything differently?
I think that of course, hindsight's always 20/20 on a number of different fronts. I think that one of the biggest gaps that we have is we didn't adequately manage expectations of what the potential impact of this was going to be for council and for the public. Again, this is taking everybody's transportation that uses public transit and turning it all upside down. Going forward, we do have the Transit Advisory Committee, which meets quarterly in order to discuss these things. We've got a number of transit users on there, and that is a great wellspring of knowledge going forward. But I would hasten to say that I don't think our challenge is not getting enough feedback, right? I think that we've been very successful at getting a lot of feedback, even from the original engagement. And we've adjusted for some of the feedback. I think where the problem is managing expectations as to what the impact is. What I've heard a lot of is, let's go back to the old system and add some of the good stuff for CityLink. Bravo, love to do it, right? And I hope that if the council decides to do that, that's great. The problem with that, in order to get to that, is we're looking at about a $10 million price tag in order to get to that point. So we don't necessarily have a lot of different tools at our point. What we really need to do, in my professional opinion at this point in time, is take the foundation that we have and build upon it. As you can see, we've made great strides within the last 5-6 months on progress on CityLink, on virtually every metric that has been provided. And we will continue to do that as we come out of COVID in order to do that. These plans were not perfect. They were also done very quickly, but they were also done at the lowest historic point of ridership in the system. And it was an opportunity to do this with a minimal impact to the number of people.
Appreciate that. Thank you. My second question, my last right now, is Mr. Oberg. You made a statement that 90% of users were not happy with the changes. Am I correct when you stated that? Or is that something tangible, or is that something you're just kind of going by what you see on a daily basis through your membership?
I think the comment was 90% in the satisfaction survey that was done by KPMG said they were satisfied with the old system. Even today, riders are constantly at us that they like the old system better than what's there. I barely get someone coming up and say, I like CityLink. Just one other note I'd like to add for council is we need to ensure what's best for our community and not based on an ideology, industry standard, right? Our community is pretty important. And I think our system should be based for our community, not for an industry standard.
Okay. And my last question for you, and I appreciate the answer. Thank you for referring to the KPMG, because I wrote it down here, I should put the KPMG underneath there. Now, obviously, there's numbers being that ridership has gone up. Have you seen the people that used to use it no longer using it because of the changes?
That's correct.
So lots of familiar faces are not on the bus anymore. They're fine. So it isn't a matter of the people are saying, oh, well, I guess it is what it is. I'll keep on using the bus. We've lost past users.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
I go back to my motion of going into in-camera. Are we fine with taking that motion at this time?
I am, but I have one question for Mr. Sanderson arising from his comments. Mr. Sanderson, you indicated that, and I don't want to put words into your mouth, but as I understood it, to revert to the old system would cost the city $10 million. Is that, do I understand that correctly?
No, sorry. I think that a number of the speakers recommended that we revert to the old system and then add the elements of CityLink onto it that were working, which would be about a $10 million price tag.
So you've evaluated this on behalf of administration, and that's the number that you've come up with, is that it would cost us $10 million to revert to the system we had before and add those components of CityLink that we seem to think is working?
That's based upon the Lethbridge Transit Master Plan from 2017, which was the basis for the CityLink project.
All right, and in the documentation that we had earlier and previous presentations, you've talked in terms of a number of $352,000. How do you reconcile, or at least help me understand how you reconcile a difference between $352,000 and $10 million? I don't understand that.
The largest cost difference, the largest cost driver for transit are bus hours, the amount of hours that are on the bus. If we revert back to the old system, then all of the service that is operating on the CityLink routes, the fast, frequent service that is popular and is creating our ridership, would go away. So in order for us to have those fast, frequent routes combined with the loop closed system network that we had before, would require additional expenditures of $10 million in order to overlay those on top of each other's, which was the recommendation of the Lethbridge Transit Master Plan.
Right, so you're sticking with those numbers.
Again, I'm estimating the numbers based upon reading them, but the actual numbers are in the Lethbridge Transit Master Plan.
Thank you for your insights.
Fox?
Yeah, thank you. Through the chair, Councillor Hope, I just wanted to make sure that I think that also included the capital costs of more buses to run those routes? No? That is operating, okay, sorry.
I'm going to go back to my motion that we move in camera to a closed session. Since I've made the motion, I'm going to hand to the Vice Chair to call the question. All in favor of in-camera session? Okay. What that means is we are going to ask the public just to wait for us in the lobby. We will reopen the open session after we are done the closed session. And Mr. Fox, anyone who's online who shouldn't be in closed session, if you could just make sure that your staff members shut down their computers for the time being. Thank you all for your patience. We're just trying to get live streaming back on. As soon as we have that, we'll restart. And we are back into questions, focusing on CityLink questions. So is there any other members of SPC? If you can get yourself in the queue before live streaming goes. Are we good? All right. So we have returned now to the open portion of the Civic Works SPC. We are continuing on questions for any of the members of the public or any members of administration. I know our guest hasn't asked any questions. If you have any, Councillor Schmidt-Rempel, or for any members of SPC. Mayor Higgin, I know you've joined us if you have questions.
I don't at this time. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
So then we move forward to our resolution. I believe there's been a slight amendment to the resolution, or are we doing that as a separate one? All right. So I have a resolution brought forward. Be it resolved that the Civic Works Standing Policy Committee recommend that Council approve the CityLink Transit Network redesign permanently, with quarterly adjustments being made to reflect feedback, changing travel patterns, and metric indicators. And further be it resolved that the Civic Works Standing Policy Committee direct that the closed meeting discussions with respect to CityLink Network redesign remain confidential pursuant to Section 24, Advice from Officials of the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act. And just so people understand, Section 24 is related to HR matters that we discussed under FOIP. So that is the resolution before us. There are two parts to it. If anyone has questions or discussion around it, Councillor Parker.
Thank you very much. My question is, what would be the consequence of us when if we voted no to this, what would be the consequence?
Anything we do still goes forward to council, but it would go forward as not recommended, but it is still council's decision, and they can go with our recommendation or they can overturn at council. Or change it at council. Council can do whatever they want. We're just making a recommendation. Councillor Middleton Hope?
I'd like to see the motion up on the board. I can't see it. There was a small version of it earlier. There we go.
So there are two portions. The second part is just to keep the discussion we had in private, make sure it stays private. The first one is recommending that we approve the CityLink transport, or we're recommending that council approve the CityLink Network, Transit Network redesign to have it permanent, with quarterly adjustments being made to reflect changing travel patterns and metric indicators. And wow, is that bright now? Just we four are. Jen, Councillor Schmidt-Rempel is a guest today. So that's why I don't let her make any motions.
Nice to have you, Jen.
Any thoughts on this?
Councillor Parker?
So are we questioning this or are we voting on this?
We are questioning it first, just to see if anybody has questions, concerns, et cetera. That is what is being brought forward. And then we can make amendments, we can vote, we can move from there.
Okay, so, okay. The way it's written right now, I can't support. But that's why I asked the question is, what is the consequence if we didn't support this? Is there some other resolutions written up, Mr. Westerson, that say we go to 2 and add money to the budget? Is there a resolution on the books at all there? Okay. Okay.
Are you recommending that we amend this to adding money to it? To address any concerns as that we have? Because one thing everybody's in agreement on, they all want more money.
I understand that, but another thing I'm hearing agreement too from in the community, this is me, once again, I totally appreciate what our administration is doing. I'm just going by what I'm hearing in the community, because as the elected official, we're kind of the person between the service and the community and the users. So the users have told me that they would like to see it go back to what it was, and then from there, but I would say even take it to another level, go back to where it was, and then build on from there improvements. That's what I would like to see. So I'd like to put that in there, but that would be a separate resolution. It wouldn't even be in the amendment. It would be a separate resolution.
Yeah, because you are not just changing this one, you are going completely opposite of this one. Okay. All right, so we have this resolution on the books. Is there any debate, Councillor Middleton Hope?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm not going to support this. The reason that I have difficulty with it is the language in the motion, particularly dealing with permanency.
No, it can be changed, the language in the motion. That's what we're doing.
Yeah, so the word permanent causes me some consternation. I would request that it either be removed or amended because my experience in regards to activities like this is that once we've made a decision to move forward, it makes it very difficult to move back, even if it is the right decision at some point to move back. So if you would be amenable to a friendly amendment to that, removing the term permanent, I can live with the quarterly adjustments, but I have concerns over the permanency of it and the language.
Is that a formal amendment?
Yes.
Councillor Palladino, you okay with that? Okay. So nobody's actually moving this, so we can do it by consensus, can't we? Remove the permanent? All right. So would you be prepared to bring forward that motion?
Madam Chair, may I just interject for a second? The word permanently, and I'll defer to Mr. Sanderson and Mr. Fox over here as well. The way it reads without the word permanently is it's still going to be implemented, and you're just coming forward with quarterly adjustments. Are you looking to implement it on a trial basis or some sort of timeline, Councillor? And Mr. Sanderson and Mr. Fox, please jump in.
If I may, I actually, I like the language of it. I agree with Councillor Middleton Hope that the word permanent, although that was my language, is problematic because we see this as a living network that will constantly be changing and based upon travel patterns, demand, all those other sorts of things, and we think that that's a sound modification and would support that and recommend that as well.
And it would then reflect the community. If the community has concerns, the system can change.
Of course. I would also like to add, and again, this is probably not for the amendment, but service standards are an item that we have on the agenda for May, which also may provide some context to what future iterations of the network would look like.
So I'm asking once again, is anyone willing to bring that forward as a motion with permanently removed? Okay, I will move it. I will bring this on the floor, which again means that Councillor Palladino will have to bring the motion forward. So I move this resolution. You now just have to ask for debate. No, I'm moving it. You're bringing it for debate. You're just following the next question. Okay, so I will start debate. I knew when this was brought forward that we were going to have some concern from the public. We didn't make changes to a transit system. We blew it up and recreated a brand new transit system. And this is a very different transit system. I see this very differently than I think some of my colleagues do, because I look at this on the map and I look at the old streetcar system, and that's what we've created. We have gone back to the streetcar system with buses that people loved because it was regular, you knew where it was efficient and effective. When we went to having the transit system that was throughout the entire community, we could never keep up. It was growing, and it was, as the city moved, because we have a very low density city, it wasn't working. I know the concerns people have with this. There is further to walk. We know we had the Lakeview issue. We're going to have other concerns with this. But this is making the numbers go up. This is actually going to improve the lives of a lot more people because more people are using it. I know I've had this conversation with Mr. Sanderson a lot. I believe in public luxury. The public services we provide the community should not just exist. They should be a luxurious, amazing system. It will be better for the economy. It'll be better for the climate. Because if we have amazing swimming pools, you don't need a private swimming pool. If we have an amazing transit system, we can get rid of cars if we need to at some point in life. What we do with this transit system is absolutely vital. I use transit. I like to have public transit. And listening to members of the school district, yeah, it's not perfect. We know it's not perfect. We put in a new system. It's not yet perfect, but we will make adjustments as we move ahead. But this is a move in the right direction. If you actually, again, historian, if you look at our transit system, we have been losing ridership over the decades. It has been going into a slow decline, and it has been a million little cuts to the transit system. This is a reinvigorated, redesigned transit system, and yes, it's not going to be easy, but I have full commitment that this is the right way to go in the long run. And so I would ask the support of SBC for this, because, yeah, there is a lot of potential in this system. So that's my debate. Well, don't look at me. The vice chair is leading this.
Thank you, Deputy Chair. And thank you very much for your thoughts, Councillor Crozin, and I respect your perspective where you're coming from. I'm kind of looking at it from another perspective. And first of all, I just want to say right off the bat, I think our administration's done an excellent job in bringing forward solutions, showing consequences to decisions and all that. So I want to say thank you first and foremost. So I'm speaking on behalf of the people that elect me, so that's why I want to make sure it's important. And even if ATU wasn't here and all that, I'm going based on what I've heard in the community over the last months, speaking to boards, talking to community groups, senior organizations, and they said is, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So can't you just kind of go back to what it used to be? And I said, well, maybe we can even do better than that. Maybe we should go back to what it used to be, but then build up make some improvements from that with other folks. So I just don't think this, the way it is right now, I don't think it's serving the community, and I think we've lost a lot of users. I think it was progressive, and it's okay to learn from what we've done, but I think it's time for us to go back to the old system, and for that reason I will not be supporting, and I do have an alternate resolution on the books if this is defeated. So I won't be supporting it. Is there any further, ask if there's any further debate. So ask if there's any further debate.
You, John, or Jen want to debate? Now's your chance.
So is there any further debate on this?
You don't know what you don't know. I think this has actually served to confuse me more than I can say that I was before. I don't profess to have a great deal of expertise in this particular.
Books? Oh, sorry.
Yeah, thanks. I don't profess to have a great deal of expertise in this area. I have a lot of expertise in a lot of areas, but this isn't one of them. I don't take public transportation, haven't taken public transportation in decades. That doesn't mean that I'm immune to the concerns of both the ridership as well as the people that drive or operate. I've been corrected on that already. Operate the buses. But I'm also very supportive of our administration. I have come to understand that our administration across the board does an exemplary job in regards to their thoughtfulness in looking at very, very complex problems. And so if I'm in a position where I have to make a decision on this, I am in favor of moving forward. Councillor Parker has an amended motion.
Alternate resolution.
Alternate resolution. And that will somehow appease or placate my wandering mind.
So you're kind of saying what's behind door number 2? You've seen door number 1. Do you want to?
Yeah.
I don't know. I think we have to deal with the resolution that's tabled right now.
We have to deal with it, but I think he wants to know what it is so he can make a decision based on it. So you've made your debate. If you gave it to Councillor Palladino and he read it, it could be his debate.
Mine. This is everyone does. so I can read this out.
Yeah, just pretend it's your debate.
Okay, so this, you can read my resolution, alternate resolution.
So moved by Alderman Parker, or Councillor Parker. Be it resolved that the Civic Works Standing Policy Committee recommends that the county, or the council return Lethbridge Transit routing and design to pre-CityLink implementation, and further be it resolved that the Civic Works Standing Policy Committee recommend council create a committee consisting of uses, operators, administration, and 2 members of City Council to bring recommendations on increasing performance on service levels of Lethbridge Transit, and further resolved that the Civic Works Standing Policy Committee direct the closed meeting discussions with respect to CityLink Network design remain confidential pursuant to Section 24.
You can separate anything out there. So if you like the idea of the committee, you can add it to the other resolution. You can mix and match things. So I think I might have just confused you more, Councillor Middleton Hope, because it's like a menu item right now as we're moving forward. We have this resolution we have to discuss, but we can add and change it.
I appreciate that, because I think the secondary component of Councillor Parker's submission in regards to a greater application of the consultative process, I'm certainly in favor of that piece. I'm not in favor of, and we've heard this from a number of stakeholders, that we've blown this thing up, and now we're trying to cobble it back together again. By going away from this and going back to what we had before, are we achieving the same goal? Are we blowing this thing up again and then going back to a state where we were some time before? So I like the idea of creating an opportunity for stakeholders to become more actively involved in this process. So that piece of it, however we can cobble that together with one of the 2 proposals, I certainly can get behind that piece of it.
Question. You do already have some sort of community group. Does it include the people that they're talking about? I don't think there's any members of council on there, et cetera. Who's on the group that you have currently?
Thank you. The current TAC is made up of riders and stakeholder groups in the community. We would fully support, and it's a creation of administration, but we would fully support a board or a committee or something that was appointed by council in order to provide that. And we would find that to be actually a very great tool for us going forward in order to balance future recommendations for the transit system. So yeah, we think it's a great idea.
I'm going to suggest from a procedural basis that be taken out of any of the motions, because what you're suggesting, if council goes on it, I don't know if Mr. Lowen's on, depends what it is, it either has to have a bylaw or not, and that any time council creates a committee has to go to governance. So I think that's a separate thing that shouldn't be discussed with either of the other ones, if that makes sense. Or we just have to make sure procedurally it gets over to the governance discussion. Am I correct on my understanding of our procedure bylaw, Mr. Westerson, that there is another extra step to that conversation? Councillor Parker, would that make sense?
That part, yeah, but.
So we can make a separate motion on creating that or recommending that, regardless of which other one we do, because that one would have to eventually get over to be recommended by council over to governance, or we could recommend it straight to governance, because that's what governance SBC is responsible for.
Quite candidly, I do.
I think
I'm concerned about the comments of if we go backwards, we're looking at a $10 million tab for this, and I don't want to overcharacterize that, but I'm certainly sensitive to that. If we have to go backwards and it's going to cost us a substantial amount of money, is that the right decision? At this particular juncture, I'm not convinced that it is.
At this time, we're not talking to admin. We're in the conversation.
Point of clarification. I just want to get, should we get a point of clarification? Because, so why don't we do this? We're dealing with 2 resolutions in front of us. Actually, we're dealing with only one. We have one resolution that was brought forward by Councillor Crozin, Deputy Mayor Crozin. And it is what it is, and that's how it stands. If it's supported, it passes, it gets the one recommended to council, and council will vote on it, okay? If we're divided on it, that's okay to be divided on these things too, because council at the end of the day is going to be following the hammer. We're just a subcommittee of council. So let's deal with the one right now. So far, we've heard Councillor Crozin has introduced it. I've spoke against it. You want to hear an alternate one right now, but this is where you have to make the decision. Do you support this one or not, or debate to it?
And keep in mind also, if you're looking for soap time, You have it because this won't go to council for a while, so there is a time in between that you can, get your questions answered, et cetera. So you will have time to review some of this stuff in your council role after the SBC makes whatever decision.
Candidly, I don't like either of them.
Then that would give you the time between council to come up with an alternate resolution to bring forward.
Struggling with this a lot. I'm disappointed.
You know what? Here's what I'm going to do right now. We're going 10-minute recess. We're just going to take a recess.
But can I also just add one more thing here? And I think you're very correct, Deputy Chair. Whatever resolution gets brought forward, it can be massaged in the meantime when it goes to council. This is an opportunity to talk to your colleagues and get a feel of the land and all that, but be very transparent that the decision officially is made at a council meeting without bias.
SBC is done deliberately so we have more than one kick at the can at anything, and so that we have time in between to think about it, to conversation. You can vote for something here and vote against it there. We can vote for something here and change it there. This is so that we don't just make decisions on a one day at the council meeting. So this is the whole purpose of these, is if you are confused, we have SBC so that we can work through that confusion and come up with the best possible decision at council. So this is a natural part of the process.
So here's a question for you. Could I just muddy the water a little more? But this is good. This is politics, okay? So let's say we had 2 people say yes to yours and 2 said to mine no. We could technically bring both resolutions to council, couldn't we?
I don't think we can make 2 recommendations. We haven't tried that. Mr. Westerson, how does it work if we bring 2 opposing recommendations to the council? Is that basically throwing up our hands going, we can't decide?
That would be fair recommendation, or fair,
And that's
fair
a
analysis.
good, and that's a good thing, because that shows you that you have a committee that is divided, and so the greater council has an opportunity to make that decision as well. So there's nothing wrong. And I've seen decisions of SBCs be completely overturned. Example being the mask mandate, where 3 of us felt that we didn't think that we should have a mask bylaw, but that was overturned by council. And so it does happen. It does happen.
SBCs allow the public to see the messy part of politics. That no decisions are made behind doors. You're seeing what the conversations we have. Now, I see 2 hands up. I'm going to let Mr. Lowen speak first, because when the city solicitor wants to speak, we're usually in trouble.
I just want to, and Mr. Westerson may be able to direct us a little bit better, but if the numbers are such that Councillor, the 2 and 2, a tie vote would be that motion is defeated. And so neither motion would go forward, if I understand what Councillor Parker was explaining. And ultimately that's possible, that no recommendation could come from the committee, but from a governance perspective, it might be worth the committee hanging on to the report until they could develop a recommendation, whatever that might be.
We can postpone another month. I know Transit may hate us, but that is another option, is that we can, if you have questions you need to have answered in the month, or we can set up a special meeting and do it in 2 weeks. So that we have lots of options. We can keep it here and postpone again, if you still aren't sure of which way you want to go. We can forward it to council as we don't have a recommendation and have a conversation more fulsomely there. There's a few things we can do. I see Mayor Higgin has his hand up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was just wondering if there's another option with this. We've seen 2 that have come forward, and I've seen in the past that we're able to do, when admin may bring things forward to us, we have options. So why couldn't both of these be on a resolution? And if that resolution passes, it's option 1 to do this, or option 2 to do this. Is that not, I guess maybe I'd look to the city solicitor, but I can't see that being an issue if we were to bring them both forward as one resolution and as options, have council decide on the options.
So maybe I can add to that. Maybe that's a good point. Maybe Mr. Lowen, can you correct me if I'm wrong? Can we amalgamate both these options, and then we could vote on it? So council supports, SBC supports bringing both these options to council for council to choose the option that's most appropriate. Is that fair to state?
Weston, I think that's more of a governance question, isn't it?
Certainly. I was going to say any of the lost votes would show up on the recommendation, or not the recommendation, but the reports. Pardon me, too many R words here. The report that would head from SBC to council as a lost vote with no recommendation to council.
Okay, so why don't we do this? Okay, why don't if I state it this way, and correct me if I'm wrong, okay? Be it resolved that Civic Standing Work Committee recommend that City Council look at two options, a choice of two options, and then put option one, that'd be Belinda's, option two, my resolution, and further resolve that we construct a committee and do all that, and then we can support that as a full package, and then council can vote on it, and council could say, we want option A or option B, knowing that option C, that the third part being a strike up a committee, is something that goes with both options, one or two. Could you do that collectively as a?
I would think, just for simplicity, the one about the committee, make it a separate one, so it doesn't get lost in the debate around the other ones. Just make it a separate resolution that we're recommending council create this. Because if it goes to council and they don't like our two options, they'll still have to cut that one off. Like, they'll still have to separate it from the other ones. So I would recommend we make that as a separate motion. So what I'm going to suggest we take a 10-minute recess, because we have to write some of these things down. And then what we can do is withdraw the motion on the table with the consent of everybody, bring up the motion that has the two options, and bring up the other motion about the committee.
That's good.
All right. We're in 10-minute recess while we get this paperwork done, and we'll be right back. Okay, remember that. I think that's where that information's coming from. All right, we'll just wait for Councillor Middleton Hope to come in. All right, so the parliamentarian was down and gave us the advice. What we're going to do, we still have a motion on the table, and we will vote on that one. If that passes, it goes forward as the recommendation. If it fails, then we bring forward the next resolution. So the resolution, I will read it again because I think we all forgot where we were. Be it resolved that the Civic Works Standing Policy Committee recommends that Council approve the CityLink Transit Network redesign with quarterly adjustments being made to reflect feedback, changing travel patterns, and metric indicators. And further be it resolved that the Civic Works Standing Policy Committee direct that the closed meeting discussions with respect to CityLink Network redesign remain confidential pursuant to Section 24, Advice from Officials of the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act. I have moved this, so it is Councillor Palladino who will call the vote. Okay.
I'll call a question on that. All those in favor? All those in favor? Opposed? Opposed.
That motion fails. So we now move on to Councillor Parker's motion. If you want to read that out, either Mr. Westerson or Mr. Parker.
Do you want me to read it? Thank you, Madam Chair. And first of all, thank you very much for your chairmanship. I know this has been kind of confusing, and I want to thank Mr. Westerson, Mr. Lowen, and their staff upstairs because it's been a little confusing, but I think it's important that we do this properly. I have the following resolution to be presented in front of my colleagues here. Be it resolved that the Civic Works Standing Policy Committee recommend that Council return Lethbridge Transit routing and design to pre-CityLink implementation. And further be resolved that the Civic Works Standing Policy Committee recommend Council create a committee consisting of users, operators, administration, and 2 members of Lethbridge City Council to bring recommendations on increasing performance on service levels of Lethbridge Transit. And further resolved that the Civic Works Standing Policy Committee direct the closed meeting discussions with respect to CityLink Network redesign remain confidential pursuant to Section 24, Advice from Officials of the Freedom of Information Act, Privacy Act. First of all, any questions in regards to my resolution?
I'm actually going to bring a motion to separate.
Okay.
So we separate about the committee into a separate resolution.
So I have a motion, oh, this is actually your job, but there's a motion to separate the 2 clauses in here. First, go to that being that we strike up a committee, and the other one is to go back to pre-CityLink implementation. So we could vote on each one separately. So do we have a motion to separate? Is everyone okay separating and voting on each one of these? All those in favor?
Separating?
Yeah, perfect. So now we have 2 things we're going to be voting on.
I'll take back the chair because it's now separated. So
thank you.
I didn't make the motion.
And then we'll deal with the committee one first.
Yes. So we have a motion to recommend to Council that we create a committee with Council members on it Any debate on this?
And I'll speak to it since I introduced it. I think it was important that we strike up a committee. I appreciate that we do have committees, safety and other committees, but I think it's important that we strike up a committee of stakeholders, the user groups, the people that call us, the people that talk to us in places of business, people that talk to us on the street, talk to us during election and pre-election and post-election. I think we need people such as that on there. I think we also need operators, the people that are on the floor there, they're on the front street, right on the front. They're delivering the service on a daily basis and they hear it. But also think we need to have members of administration who have the expertise and background to bring ideas to the table as well. And I think we need 2 members of City Council, the elected officials, to sit on that committee, to go through it, so they know exactly what's going on, what's being said, and so they can be a conduit back to council and report back to council. I don't know what 2 members that will be. We'll ratify that if this does pass at a council meeting. So I just think it would be a good idea, and it seems like most of the community would be supportive of that. And I think from what I'm hearing around the table earlier, I think it would be supported too. So I'd ask for council's or this subcommittee's support on that.
City Solicitor would like to speak on this.
I just wanted to ask the committee to consider that a bylaw would be needed for that, and perhaps the best body to give the detailed instructions that we'll need in terms of the membership, the numbers, some of the rules for operation might be the governance SPC.
Great recommendation, Mr. Dolan.
So it's actually a referral to governance with respect to this. Can we amend the motion in that respect?
Thank you, Mr. Dolan.
Mayor Higgin, you had a question or a comment about this motion?
Yes, I did. I just wanted to know if we were going to have to set up a committee to do this and how that process would be. So thank you, Mr. Lowen. The second question I have, if I could, was would this cover we heard of different costs that would be involved if we were to go back with the recommendations. I know this.
I hate to say this. I just, out of fairness, I don't know if Councillor Higgin can get into the debate and discussion right now on this. Can he?
Can't vote.
The question.
He can't vote. Okay. I just want to make sure. Out of fairness to Blaine. So I just didn't want. Thanks, Blaine. Go ahead. Thank you. Go ahead, Blaine.
First, I should ask Mr. Lowen. Is that okay? I guess there's maybe.
I believe it is. Mr. Westerson would be able to confirm, but my understanding was that you're entitled to participate fully with the exception of voting.
Good. That's correct.
Okay, thank you. So my question to and this is Councillor Parker's resa right now, correct? It's been split, but it's still yours, right, Councillor Parker?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so would this entail also your idea that it would be the costs associated with that? So, for example, we may have pulled out benches or we may have done certain things. Is this something that would be looked into in that group? Is that what you're thinking, that committee?
I think it could be, but I think when the terms of reference are kind of put together and all that through governance, we'll know more about that. But this is more in regards to service delivery.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Anyone else in the queue? Anyone else have debate on this?
This is strictly just on the committee.
All in favor?
This is just on the committee part.
Yeah, the motion was separate. Okay, so that recommendation or referral passes. That will go on to governance. So the second part of it is the recommendation to return to the old system. So are there any questions on that recommendation or that resolution? Okay, any debate?
Thank you, and I'll introduce it, Madam Chair. And so, first of all, I just want to say it's been a long process, and I think Mr. Sanderson and his team, Michael Fox, have done an amazing job in trying to find new ways of being progressive and all that. And obviously, we've heard some consequences to that. And there's probably a lot of people there are people in the community that probably like the changes at all. But I'm going by the vast majority of the people that I have spoken to in the community. I'm talking students, we're talking seniors, we're talking people that rely on it to get to work. And like I stated earlier, a lot of people's livelihoods are based around the transit system. It's an essential service. It's also a social service in our community. Sometimes we just think transit is getting from point A to point B, but a lot of people just can't afford a vehicle. They can't afford. And so when we changed that new system, I think we did a disservice to those individuals. And I heard trip times took from 40 minutes to almost 2 hours at times. And of course, that could be an outliner, but I heard a common theme that it didn't make life better for the users. And so I heard that over and over. I've heard that through our school districts. I've heard that through our senior organizations. And as I stated earlier, from everyone in between. Now, the issue of $10 million is irrelevant to this conversation. And I think Mr. Sanderson stated loud and clear, if we wanted to have everything in a perfect world and we delivered on everything, there would be a cost maybe of $10 million. But that's a separate issue. My idea is if we go back to the drawing board where people kind of like to, if it's not broke, don't fix it kind of thing, and we built on it from there with recommendations from the committee, I don't know what the price tag looks like. That's going to be up to council. That's going to be something that'll have to be decided at finance or during budget deliberations. But at least we know it's kind of an a la carte if you want to add this and add this. But at the same time, I think it's important that that committee review changes that do occur, that maybe on a monthly basis or every 2 months, that we come back going, hey, this was a good move, this wasn't a good move. But at least we're starting from a baseline of where it was pre-link. And so that's all I'm asking at this time. And of course, remember, there's only 4 of us here. This resolution could pass, and it could be massaged and changed in the weeks to come. So I'm making this recommendation on behalf of this committee to be submitted to council for ratification, so I'd ask for your support.
Anyone have debate on that resolution? I will be voting against it. It is one of the greatest fallacies and flaws to take anecdotal information over evidence-based decision-making, because we are only looking at the people who are still using it. We've had 4 decades of people stepping away from it, and we haven't heard their perspective. The fact that we have more than doubled the ridership with the new changes means that we are bringing people on who weren't using it. And yes, the people who were using it at the very end are going to like it, but they're the ones who hung around. If you had anecdotal information from the people who left it and came back, that won't give more weight, but I will go with the evidence and the facts that say it's doubled, and so I will be voting against this. Councillor Middleton Hope.
Well, thank you for the insights from both Councillor Parker and yourself. I won't be voting in favor of this either. In fact, I won't vote in favor of either of the 2 proposed motions. One area that I can stand behind is the development of a group who will have an opportunity to provide input. I'm uncomfortable with going back to what we had before, which goes contrary to what I think the administration is telling us to do. I also have difficulty with not dealing with the many problems that we have encountered and I've heard from the public. And so as a result of that, I'm not going to support either one of them.
Councillor Palladino, you can weigh in or we can go to vote.
Just a quick thing. I'm disappointed that, over the confusion, obviously, but I thought things were looking up on this. And 2 weeks ago, I made one comment about ridership, that I took the bus, or I watched the buses go by, and there's only 1 or 2 heads in the buses, and it kind of upsets me and it upsets a lot of people. But I also had one question at that time, and the question was, it's quoted here, how much input did the operators and union have into the CityLink? And now I'm hearing that it was limited feedback, and they're here representing themselves. And I don't know, I'm just uncomfortable, but I will be supporting Ryan's motion, or Alderman Parker.
I've called the question. All in favor?
Actually, I'd like to wind up if I could. Thank you. First of all, once again, both parties, that being our administration, our staff, the operators have done an amazing job. This is strictly a consequence of a past council decision. You gotta hear that loud and clear. Our administration were just doing what was requested and recommended by council and working with our administration. My perspective on this is this didn't work out the way it did, and it's okay to admit that. Now, some people argue that it's working fine and all that. I campaigned, I'm bringing this issue forward, and it's important because there's a lot of people in this community. This was the #1 issue that I heard prior to election, during election, and still post-election. So I'm doing my due diligence as an elected representative and bringing this resolution forward, and I think it's representative of where the community is right now, and I'd ask for your support.
Okay.
Call the question.
Question has been called. All in favor? And those opposed? Motion is not carried. So what will be done at this point is 3 recommendations will move forward, or non-recommendations, to council. And I'm going to recommend, with hearing what I've heard today, that this go forward to council as a presentation, not a submission and not on consent agenda. It will simply get pulled from consent agenda. I just need a nod that everybody's in agreement with that.
Maybe you can just, and I think if you're within the circle, you kind of understand, but can you kind of explain what that exactly means to the people in the audience, the people who are reporting on this and all that? So what's going to happen then?
It's going to go to the next council, so there will be, basically, it'll be very obvious to council that no decision was made here, that 2 resolutions were discussed, both were turned down, and final decision will be made by council. Council can choose at that point, after hearing the presentation, well, council has a suite of options. They could choose one of the recommendations that we've turned down. They could choose a completely different recommendation. They can refer it back to us because they don't want to make the decision at this time. They can refer it to another SPC. They can refer it to administration. So there will be a suite of options that council will have. There will be recommendations brought forward, as with anything. They will see the recommendations we had that we turned down, and there will be a fulsome conversation at council on this.
Thank you.
All right. Brings us to our last resolution, which is simply related to our first closed meeting today. So this is 6.1 service level review. Be it resolved that council direct that the closed meeting discussions, reports, documents, and attachments with respect to the service level review remain confidential pursuant to Section 24, Advice from Officials of the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act. And further be it resolved that the Civic Work Standing Policy Committee recommends City Council receive the service level review report as confidential information at the February 15, 2022 closed meeting of City Council. That is the motion. All in favor? Any opposed? Perfect. The last motion is adjournment. We are done. Now, just remind my colleagues, we are in another meeting in 20 minutes. So, Thank you to the members of the public. We will have another kick at the can at this, so we will probably be having more conversations around this before the February 15th meeting.